The Richmond International Raceway, where Gary Ballou was black flagged for illegally passing Darrell Waltrip in the pits and was forced by NASCAR officials to go a lap down. Let's head back to the race now on lap number 70 with Benny Parsons still in the lead right here on ESPN Classic.
Running in second position at this time is Morgan Shepherd. In third, Dave Marcus, and in fourth position is Joe Ruttman. Running fifth, continuing to be Richard Petty, as Benny Parsons moved to the inside of Jody Ridley there in turn number 4 and making a pass on that car. Now down into turn number 1. Parsons continuing to run smoothly in that car. He is the second leader of the afternoon. Morgan Shepherd led the first few laps. Then Parsons took over the lead and has held it ever since.
Well, Benny has won 20 races overall in his NASCAR career, and a lot of those races have come on tracks exactly like this. He seems to be able to pick up 3 or 4 wins on a consistent basis every year. He was very enthusiastic and very optimistic about landing this ride in the Harry Ranier Racing Stable this year. Waddell Wilson, one of the established fastest mechanics in all of NASCAR, and they hope for not only continued success in the short tracks. They know Benny is certainly capable of that, but maybe with a little improvement on the super speedways, this guy could well be one of the main threats for the season-long championship. Benny Parsons, and he certainly showed us he can go fast in the super speedways. He sat on the pole at Daytona.
The advantage that Benny Parsons has over Morgan Shepherd is about a half a straightaway at this point. Meanwhile, we continue to go back and look at the Labonte and Harry Gant battle. This is for 7th position, as right now Terry Labonte in the number 44 Stacy Chevrolet has 7th place wrapped up, but Harry Gant putting on the challenge. Terry Labonte has won $753,453 on the Winston Cup Trail in his career. Corpus Christi, Texas is the hometown for this young man. He's 25 years of age.
Well, that gives you an idea of all the dollars that are now available in NASCAR competition. Labonte with just that one career win. In the 1981 season, more than 20 drivers won over $100,000. That is the most prolific earnings in a single season by any division in automobile racing. More than 20 drivers over $100,000 a year ago. There you see Benny Parsons putting a lap on a young man who did very well at Daytona, Kyle Petty. Obviously, they don't have the right combination here at Richmond today.
So Benny Parsons in turn number 3 has completed 76 laps, about to complete 77 out of 400 that will make up this race. Ricky Rudd has been in the pit area several times. He's out on the racetrack right now. Let's find out what the problem is in the pit area.
Evidently, Ricky Rudd was involved with a little fender bending, and his front end was pulled out of alignment. They had to replace the right front ball joint.
That's the story then on Ricky Rudd, as apparently he has the problem solved, because you can see him moving around several of the slower cars on the racetrack. So Rudd trying to work his way back up into contention in the Piedmont Airlines Pontiac. Second place battle is a good one. It involves Morgan Shepherd in the 98 and Dave Marcus in 71.
Well, Bob, the last lap around, Marcus had inched his way up to the inside of Morgan Shepherd. It took him about 20 laps to get himself positioned there. And just as he got it, wouldn't you know, the sand ran out on the hourglass. They approached slower traffic, and he had to move back in line, and Morgan shot by on the high side. But Marcus, in another one of those J.D. Stacy stable race cars, has really been threatening Morgan Shepherd. But Shepherd, the old veteran that he is on this type of racetrack, is cool as a cucumber out there, and he hasn't made too many mistakes. There you see Marcus getting a little bit out of shape, really lead-footing him through the turns, trying to get that inch that he needs to slip inside. He may have him this time.
Marcus in the Chevrolet trying to pass Morgan Shepherd in the Buick, cannot get the job done and settles back into third position. But a great battle here for second in the Richmond 400. Once again, it is Marcus going to the inside of Shepherd and still unable to get around. No drafting, of course, here on this short 1/2 mile racetrack. In fact, the track is very narrow, and there was considerable speculation as to whether or not the cars would be able to pass into turns, but we have seen a lot of it here this afternoon. Certainly a 2-groove racetrack in the turns here at Richmond.
Well, you also get an idea of how much lap traffic is going to play a role in this race. Much more so than on the super speedways. And Marcus now really gets a big jump on Morgan as they go into turn 1 and 2. But Shepard stands on the throttle coming out of turn number 2. He had a few more RPMs as he was running high on the racetrack. He was able to blast out of the starting blocks. They get very close as they come out of turn number 4, down to complete another lap. And Shepard continues to slam the door on Dave Marcus, who is trying to Fred Bolitnikoff Morgan Shepard, that is to say, out-finesse him.
Great Winston Cup Grand National Racing in Richmond, Virginia, side by side, touching at times on the racetrack. Morgan Shepard and Dave Marcus going at it tooth and nail. Look at this to the inside. It is Dave Marcus pulling side by side with Morgan Shepard, but he just cannot pull off a clean pass as Shepard is able to out-accelerate him most of the time. Great side-by-side, door-handle to door-handle racing.
I'll tell you, Bob, you got to be tough, as we said at the top of the show, to run on these half miles because there's a lot of knocking around of both car and driver that goes on. But this is one of the cleanest battles I've seen in a long time. They touched, but you saw neither one of the cars got out of shape in any way, shape, or form. Both of the drivers just out there racing. It's a tremendous duel, and I'll tell you, I bet they're having a good time.
Well, that is, of course, one of the differences between super speedway racing and racing on the short tracks. Had these cars touched at 200 miles an hour at Daytona or the other super speedways, it could very easily have led to a serious problem. But these guys actually trade paint out there on the shorter tracks. Now a slower car, the number 24, belonging to Lenny Pond.
Oh, my goodness. Marcus was able to go too abreast on the high side. I don't know how Morgan held on. He was up in the marbles.
Still, they're side by side as they continue to battle for second position. We'll stay with this battle. We remind you once again that the leader of this race is Benny Parsons, but he's continuing to stretch out the advantage on these two drivers who are concerning themselves with battling each other and getting in a second. Look at this again, 3 abreast out of turn number 2, and this time Dave Marcus is able to pass by Morgan Shepard and move into second position.
Boy, I'll tell you, there was just no way that Marcus, who is currently in his 15th season on the Winston Cup Trail, was going to give up this time when he had that advantage. Lap traffic had shut the door on him before, but Marcus, who is one of NASCAR's $1 million plus winners, he's won $1.2 million in his career, 4 wins, and at one point he was the hot shoe in NASCAR racing when he was hooked up with Harry Hyde in the K&K Dodge insurance machine. They won a lot of races and a lot of money, and boy, were they fast.
Well, Dave Marcus does have a win here in Richmond. Richard Petty has won 13 times at this racetrack. Not necessarily this race. There are 2 races held each year here in Richmond. Bobby Allison and Darrell Waltrip have both won 4 races here. Benny Parsons has won 2. Cale Yarborough 3. Dave Marcus, James Hilton, and Neil Bonnet have each won 1 race. As a matter of fact, Neil Bonnet won his very first Grand National race here at Richmond, Virginia.
We have a report from Timing and Scoring that Tom Sneva in the white red trim number 37 race car, the Rogers leasing machine that Sneva has moved into this year for the first time, has been given the black flag. Now, you'll recall that Sneva was involved in one of the Gary Ballou incidents, so perhaps NASCAR has spied something that is just not perfect with that machine.
Darrell Waltrip was in the pit area a couple of times in the early going, but he has moved back up into speed and is now running in 8th position. So Darrell Waltrip moved from the rear of the field up to 8th at this point. So Waltrip in the Mountain Dew Buick doing a great job out there. Darrell, hailing from Franklin, Tennessee, is 35 years old and is the defending Winston Cup champion.
Yeah, and he just escaped from a very interesting battle between himself and Harry Gant and Terry Labonte. Both Gant and Labonte have been running well. They've been running consistently. They've also been on the racetrack with Bobby Allison. And Waltrip worked his way through all 3 of those drivers, Gant, Labonte, and Allison. So Darrell really is hooked up here as we approach the 90 lap point in this race. And Waltrip looks like he may be moving to the front. He does remain on the lead lap with the leader, who once again is Benny Parsons. There's Waltrip, the defending Winston Cup champion.
Here is the rundown at 90 laps. Benny Parsons, the leader. Dave Marcus, second. Morgan Shepard is third. 4th position belongs to Joe Ruttman. In 5th is Richard Petty. 6th, Dale Earnhardt. 7th is Darrell Waltrip. 8th is Bobby Allison. In 9th position, Terry Labonte. 10th is Harry Gant. 11th is Mark Martin. In 12th position is Tommy Ellis. 13th is Neil Bonnet. And 14th belongs to Ron Bouchard. All of those cars on the lead lap. Leandra Riley is in the Tom Sneva pit where work continues in that area. Let's go to Leandra.
Tom Sneva is in the pits because he has transmission troubles, and he was thinking on the track. NASCAR pulled him in, and right now they look perplexed as to how to solve it. They're keeping him awfully long.
You can also see the damage on the left side of that race car caused by the incident earlier with Gary Ballou, but Tom Sneva pulls back into competition. Mark Martin in the number 2 Apache Stove Buick is continuing to move up well. He started this race here this afternoon outside of row number 6 and is in the 11th position at this point. Mark Martin from North Liberty, Indiana.
Well, Mark started his career down in Arkansas near Batesville running the dirt tracks, and he is probably most known for his exploits with ASA. Remember, a lot of those exploits and a lot of those victories came on half-mile racetracks. Right behind Mark is Neil Bonnet. And Neil Bonnet, of course, is one of those drivers who just 3 years ago Mark Martin was admiring from afar, and now here he is in a Grand National stock car race with his own sponsor, whom the family collected for him for this racing season, battling with Neil Bonnet. But Mark Martin, he is another driver who has a lot of experience in recent years, not only on this kind of racetrack, but on races on a track of this size, about this length, 300 and 400 laps. So Martin could well be a factor. Remember, he qualified in the pole a couple of times last year. They never really found out how to run one of these 400 lap races in a Grand National stock car. They learned a lot last year. Mark Martin still has a chance here today.
Tom Sneva has pulled into the pit area once again behind the wall, indicating that it could be all over for Tom Sneva this afternoon, the Indianapolis car driver who is on the Grand National Trail this year. Benny Parsons is about to put a lap on the 2 drivers we were just talking about, Neil Bonnet and Mark Martin. Benny Parsons in the number 28 car. J.D. Stacy Pontiac is leading this race at this point. Dave Marcus in the J.D. Stacy Chevrolet continues to run in 2nd position, and Morgan Shepherd in the Levi Garrett Buick is 3rd. We will continue with our live coverage of the Richmond 400 as we will bring you all 400 laps here this afternoon, and 101 laps have been completed, so we are a quarter of the way through.
Bob, you know, the rest of the teams have got to, at this point, they got to be scratching their heads and beginning to worry about Benny Parsons. I tell you, he has looked super strong. We've noted that he's run and won on this racetrack before, and even though we're not even 1/4 of the way through this race, he is now beginning to put a lap on the rest of the field that is running in the top 10.
We have had 3 yellows, but we have been under green for the past few laps, and we continue under green. We will take this break and be back with more from Richmond.